This video will continue our UX UI conversation, focusing on user interface. All right, so user interface. So when we think of UI, that means and stands for user interface. And one of my great examples that I love to use is Instagram, right? You know, everybody's super familiar with Instagram. So this was actually, this has obviously been a couple of updates. It looks a little different even now, but this was right after they did their first big update. Before, they had, everything was a little more colorful, a little brighter. They used to have this kind of blue bar at the bottom. Things were a little bit busier. So they actually, this is when they kind of redid their logo, updated it, and kind of went with this more gradient thing. This is also when they first introduced stories for the first time. So stories have been around for a little while, but this was the first iteration of that. So a couple of things that they did is you'll notice they stripped out all the color. So the little color, the nav bar down here at the bottom is no longer, that blue bar. And some of you guys may not even remember that version, but you could go back and look at the old versions online, just kind of screenshots of them. But they streamlined everything here. They made this kind of like a creamy white, not super stark white, but a creamy white. And one of the things that allowed them to do was to really put a focus on just the content itself, right? Because when you're on Instagram, the focus is the video and photography content. And then obviously they add the stories, and then they use, continuing with their visual identity, they use their lovely gradient to indicate if there is a story that someone has uploaded, and just made everything, because they did simplify visually the user interface, it just made it so much easier to just go directly to the content and highlight and focus all of the beautiful content that their users are creating. Another example that I wanted to give to you guys is the Walgreens app. So the Walgreens mobile app went through a lot of different phases. This was one of their most recent updates back about a year or so ago. Again, they've probably updated since then, but this is the one kind of whenever they made their big jump to really, really like overhauling their UI. So before, when you would go to open up the Walgreens app, everything was very busy, very wordy, and they simplified it down. They gave you these neat and tidy rows. Everything's got a little graphic and icon going along with it. So if I want to do prescriptions, I click that, shop, photo, coupons, everything quick and easy. Refill by scan, got a nice area there. I can click and easily go to that. So before, like, you had to click like a bazillion things to get to, the refill or to look at your balance rewards. But they just simplified everything down, and they made it much cleaner, added some contrast by highlighting the area of these white rows here, and color coding their icons. And one thing that I can't stress enough is, don't use icons just to be trendy. We are becoming even more visual navigators as far as icons. We don't like to read anymore, so we strip down the information and just put, icons or really, really nice images to go along with our quick content. So don't underestimate the powerful use of a good icon to help drive the user in navigation. So what makes a successful interface? So I want you to think of apps or websites that you may use, and think of what you really, really like about them, the ones that you love, like what do you feel like works really well about them with the user interface, and then think of things that you have to use and interact with that you just hate, right? That you just really don't enjoy. What about those interfaces or the structure altogether make it difficult for you and make it an unpleasant experience. It's really nice to check in on those own experiences that you have has as a user, because that makes the experience more relatable, and you can relate to the users you're creating for in a different arena. All right, so thinking about successful interfaces, and these are some great examples that I pulled from Behance. The best user interfaces, they're really conscious of color and color contrast. They tend to color code things to help group things together. They take great use again of that positive and negative space and the contrast, right? So let's look to the one on the right here, the Amsterdam. This is a kind of a reinvention of the American Airlines interface. So re-envisioning what that mobile app interface could look like. So this is a concept design. So very much just using the American Airlines colors, the red and the blue, their brand colors just exclusively in this interface with some nice white contrast. You notice that they really focus on tying in the red with the destination and the blue with the departure. So even here down at the bottom, we're leaving Amsterdam and we're arriving to JFK. So the blue departure, the destination for the red. So carrying that all the way through the interface so that they don't randomly change the colors, because then the user would get confused, right? And accidentally book the wrong flights. So really paying attention to those tiny details. They're kind of having a conversation with the user. Yes, I'm leaving from Amsterdam, or where do you want to travel when you're selecting your destination? And they carry that over here in the top. They've clearly marked the airlines, and they've got the call sign in red, and then they have the location here. And one other thing that they do very cleverly is they use the airplane not only as a directional device, but also to connect, right? I'm leaving Amsterdam, I'm going to JFK with the little airplane pointing down. And then they carry that airplane icon over here with scheduling the arrival and departure. You'll notice the departure airplane is going right, pointing to JFK. And then the other one is pointing back the opposite direction, right? To show where you're going and coming from. And then down in the calendar, color coding those dates as well to coincide with the arrival and departure. Again, here with the outbound flights, they actually kind of create a really nice gradient. I don't know if you notice here, to really kind of denote the transition and travel of time there. So everything kind of goes from blue to kind of a purpley red color to solid red when you have completed your arrival. So lots of great color coding going on there. We look at the left here. This is a bike route app, and they use all these really fun colors, almost too much contrast, maybe like kind of some funky colors going on here. But I did really like the way they're using the maps here, so very clear. They've got the little to and from point for your route. User activity is clearly marked and easily color coded. Your activity, it's easy to see. Resources, right? They provide an area for resources on your route. They even show you like what, if there's dangerous intersections or things to be worried about or conscious of in your route. They pop that up for you, give you those alerts. Positive encouragement, yay, you have arrived. So thinking about a user interface too, even though sometimes it can go overboard and be a little cheesy, I think it's nice to keep these personal affirmations and things in an interface, in the dialogue of the way that you talk to the user, because it just makes it much more personable, and it's less computerized and less stale. All right, so when we are thinking about creating a user interface, we ask questions. Are our users connected, engaged? does it look good, right? Like, is it inviting? Do I want to use it? If you ever opened an app or opened a screen to where something just didn't look good, you automatically get turned off to it, right? So if something innately looks inviting, you're going to want to pick it up. You're going to want to use it. You're going to want to interact and engage with it. And lastly, is it easy to use, right? Could look good all day long, but if the usability sucks, then what's the point? There are a lot of things that are beautiful, but they just don't work well. And you want to focus on usability as well as what something looks like. So just to summarize, UX is how it works, and UI is how it looks. So if we break that down step by step, so in the UX phase, we plan and research. In the UX stage, we build personas, and we also work on our wireframes. And then the UX, UI, both phases, we kind of combine both of those when we work on design. So essentially, if there's a UX person specifically and a UI person specifically, this is where they would start to team up and work together, collaborating in the previous phases too, but really working together as a team on these parts with the UX, UI design phase and the UX, UI prototyping and carrying that through all the back and forth iterations until you get a final product that you can release. Okay, so that is just an intro to thinking about UX, UI, and just broadly how it relates to users and how conscious you should be of the users when you're creating, and things to think about outside of just creating something that looks really awesome. Okay?